The research ship Harmony's Quest floated silently above the dead world. Inside the observation deck, Captain Vrel of the Zenthari stood with his forearms crossed, staring at the massive structure on the planet's surface below. His silver scales shimmered with uncertainty. "That is impossible," he whispered. The thing they had discovered was enormous. It rose from the gray dust of the planet like a finger pointing at the stars. The obelisk was made of a crystalline material that seemed to shift colors, sometimes blue, sometimes purple, sometimes a shade no one could name. It was 300 meters tall and perfectly smooth. According to their sensors, it was older than most of the stars in this sector. Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her hand against the viewing window. She was the only human on this expedition, sent by Earth to represent humanity in the Galactic Council's Archaeological Division. Her brown eyes reflected the strange light coming from the obelisk below. "How old?" she asked softly. "Approximately 4 million years," replied Mora, the insectoid scientist from Clictar Prime. Her translator device made her clicking sounds into words. "Maybe older. Our equipment has difficulty measuring something this ancient." The team had been searching for 3 weeks before finding this world. It had no name on any star chart. No records existed of any civilization living here. The planet was cold, airless, and appeared to have been dead for millions of years. But the obelisk stood there, waiting, as if time meant nothing to it. "We should land," Sarah said. "We came all this way. We need to understand what it is." Captain Vrel's tail swished nervously. "The Council sent us to observe only. They did not authorize direct contact with unknown technology." "Look at it, Captain." Sarah pointed at the obelisk. "It's clearly artificial. Someone built it for a reason. What if it contains knowledge from a civilization older than any of us?" Mora's antennae twitched in agreement. Dr. Chen is correct. This discovery is too significant to simply photograph from orbit. After 2 hours of discussion, Captain Vrel finally agreed. The landing team consisted of Sarah, Mora, the captain, and 2 others. John, a floating gas being from the Whisper Clouds, and Kree, a rock-like golem from the deep caves of Petra 7. The shuttle descended through the thin atmosphere. Sarah's heart beat faster as they approached. She had studied ancient civilizations her entire life, but nothing she had learned prepared her for this moment. The obelisk grew larger and larger until it filled their entire view. They landed 50 meters from its base. When Sarah stepped out in her environmental suit, she felt the ground crunch beneath her boots. The surface was covered in fine crystalline dust that sparkled in the light of the distant sun. "Readings are stable," Mora announced, checking her instruments. "No radiation. No energy signatures. It appears to be completely inactive." Sarah walked closer. The obelisk's surface was perfectly smooth, like glass, but warmer than it should be on this frozen world. She reached out carefully and touched it. The moment her gloved hand made contact, the entire structure blazed with light. "Everyone back," Captain Vrel shouted, his voice filled with alarm. But Sarah didn't move. She wasn't afraid. The light wasn't hot or dangerous, it felt gentle, almost curious. Symbols began appearing on the obelisk's surface, flowing like water. They were in a language Sarah had never seen, but somehow she understood their meaning. The symbols changed, shifting into images. Sarah watched as holographic projections appeared in the air around the obelisk. They showed civilizations, hundreds, thousands of them. Each one approached the obelisk, just as Sarah's team had done. Each one reached out to touch it, and each one failed. Sarah watched as species after species tried to interact with the obelisk. Some brought weapons, thinking it needed to be conquered. The obelisk simply went dark when they approached. Others brought complex mathematical equations, trying to unlock it like a puzzle. The obelisk showed them their mistakes and sent them away. Others brought religious ceremonies, prayers, and offerings. The obelisk remained silent. Then, numbers appeared. Large, glowing numbers that everyone could read, despite being in an alien language. The number was clear. 8,192. 8,192. Mora read aloud, her voice shaking. That is how many civilizations have attempted this before us. And all of them failed, Captain Vrel added quietly. The holographic images showed what happened to each failed civilization. None were destroyed or punished. Instead, they simply gave up. They returned to their worlds, disappointed and discouraged. Over time, many of those civilizations lost their drive to explore, to question, to reach for the stars. They faded away, not through disaster, but through the slow death of hope. Sarah stared at the number. 8,192 failures. The weight of all that disappointment pressed down on her. She thought about her own species, humanity, so young compared to most of the galaxy. Humans had failed so many times, wars, environmental disasters, social collapses. But they always got back up. They always tried again. She looked at the obelisk, and a strange thought entered her mind. These weren't failures. They were attempts. They were lessons. Each civilization taught something, showed a path that didn't work, and made it easier for the next one to find a better way. Sarah stepped closer to the obelisk. Her team watched nervously. She placed both hands on its surface and whispered, so quietly that only her suit's microphone picked it up. Try 9,000. The obelisk exploded with light. Not the gentle glow from before, but a brilliant radiance that made everyone shield their eyes. When the light faded, the obelisk was covered in new symbols, all pointing towards Sarah. For the first time in 4 million years, the obelisk had found someone who understood. The light from the obelisk continued to pulse, creating waves of color that washed over the landing team. Sarah stood perfectly still, her hands still pressed against the warm, crystalline surface. She could feel something. Not exactly words, but thoughts, questions, curiosity, flowing from the ancient structure into her mind. Dr. Chen, please step away from the structure, Captain Vrel said, his voice tight with worry. We do not know if it is safe. Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen. Please step with worry. Sarah shook her head slowly. It's not dangerous, Captain. It's asking me something. Asking? Mora moved closer, her instruments scanning rapidly. I am detecting neural pattern synchronization between Dr. Chen and the obelisk. They are communicating. Suddenly, a voice filled the air around them. It wasn't spoken in any language they knew, yet everyone understood it perfectly. The voice was ancient, tired, and infinitely sad. Why should your species be different from the 8,192 who came before? Sarah took a deep breath. She understood now. The obelisk wasn't a puzzle to solve or a test to pass. It was a guardian that had been disappointed too many times. It had watched civilizations approach with confidence, only to leave in despair. Can you show me? Sarah asked softly. Can you show me how they failed? The air around the obelisk shimmered. Holographic images appeared, more detailed than before. Sarah and her team watched as the history of 8,192 civilizations unfolded before their eyes. The first civilization approached the obelisk with mathematical precision. They believed the universe was built on numbers and logic. They spent years calculating, measuring, trying to find the correct equation that would unlock the obelisk's secrets. When their mathematics failed, they concluded the obelisk was impossible and left. The second civilization came with advanced technology. They scanned, probed, and analyzed every atom of the structure. They tried to force it open with energy beams and sonic frequencies. When their technology proved useless, They decided the obelisk was beyond understanding and departed. The third civilization brought philosophers and thinkers. They debated the meaning of the obelisk, wrote beautiful theories about its purpose, and created complex philosophical frameworks. But when the obelisk didn't respond to their ideas, they determined it was merely an ancient relic with no real purpose. On and on it went. Sarah watched hundreds of approaches. Some civilizations brought art, others brought religion. Some brought military might, and others brought diplomatic negotiation. Each one believed their way was the right way. Each one left when their method didn't work. I see the pattern, Sarah said quietly. They all believed they had the answer. They came here, expecting to succeed. And that is why they failed? Captain Vrel asked, confused. Because they were confident? No. Sarah turned to face her team. They failed because they only focused on themselves. They looked at the obelisk and asked, "What can we prove?" They didn't ask what they could learn. Jean, the gas being, swirled thoughtfully. I do not understand. How is that different? Sarah walked away from the obelisk and gestured at the holographic records still floating in the air. Look at them again. Every single civilization saw their failure as the end. When they couldn't unlock the obelisk, they gave up. They didn't think about who might come after them, or what their attempt might teach others. Mora's antennae straightened with sudden understanding. You are saying they were, each alone, in their attempts. Exactly. Sarah nodded. But humans, we're different. We've failed countless times in our history. We've made terrible mistakes. Tang. But we don't hide our failures. We study them. We teach them to our children. We build museums and write books about things that went wrong because we believe failure has value. Kree, the golem, spoke for the first time, his voice like grinding stones. Your species celebrates failure? That seems illogical. We don't celebrate the failure itself, Sarah explained. We celebrate what we learn from it. Every failed experiment teaches a scientist something new. Every mistake shows us a path not to take. Every civilization that tried to unlock this obelisk showed the next one what doesn't work. One of the first to do. She turned back to the obelisk. These weren't 8,000 failures. These were 8,000 teachers. The obelisk pulsed brighter, and the ancient voice spoke again. Because humans understand something important, Sarah said, speaking directly to the obelisk now. We understand that we're not special because we succeed. We're special because we keep trying even after we fail. We're special because we remember those who tried before us and honor their attempts. Sarah placed her hand back on the obelisk's surface. I said, try 9,000, because I know there will be more attempts. Maybe we'll fail too. Maybe civilizations number 9,000, 10,000, or 1,000,000 will also fail. But each attempt adds to the collective knowledge. Each try brings everyone closer to understanding. The holographic images around them began to change. Instead of showing failures, they now showed connections. Sarah could see how the mathematical approach of Civilization 1 influenced the geometric thinking of Civilization 407. She saw how the artistic interpretations of Civilization 2012 helped Civilization 5030 understand symbolism. Every attempt, every failure, was a thread in a vast tapestry of learning. You honor them, the obelisk's voice said. And now it sounded less sad, more curious. The others forgot those who came before. You remember them. Of course we remember, Sarah said softly. Because without them, we wouldn't be here. We stand on the shoulders of 8,000 civilizations worth of experience. The obelisk's light began to swirl in new patterns. Captain Vrel stepped forward cautiously. Dr. Chen, what is happening? Sarah smiled, though tears ran down her cheeks. I think it's ready to have a real conversation. The light from the obelisk settled into a gentle, rhythmic pulse. Like a heartbeat, Sarah felt the warmth radiating through her gloves. She took a deep breath and spoke to the ancient structure as if it were an old friend she had just met. "You've been alone for a very long time, haven't you?" The obelisk's light flickered. For a moment, Sarah thought she had made a mistake. Then the ancient voice returned, softer than before. 4,200,000 years. I have stood on this world, waiting, watching civilizations rise and fall across the stars. 8,192 came to me, all left disappointed. Sarah's heart ached at the loneliness in those words. That must have been incredibly hard, to wait so long, hoping someone would understand, and having everyone walk away. Thanks for watching. Thanks, see you to the see you. Hard. The obelisk seemed to consider this word. I do not experience difficulty as you do. But, yes, there is something like sadness in my programming. Each departure feels like loss. Captain Vrel and the others watched in amazement as Sarah continued her conversation. Mora whispered, "She is treating it like a person, not a puzzle." "Tell me about your beginning," Sarah asked gently. "Who created you? What were you meant to do?" The holographic images shifted again. They showed a civilization unlike any in the current galaxy. The beings were tall, made of crystalline energy, shimmering with colors that hurt to look at directly. They built structures that defied physics, created art that existed in multiple dimensions, and understood the universe in ways that seemed impossible. The first civilization, the obelisk explained. They called themselves the architects of tomorrow. They existed 2 million years before your galaxy formed its current shape. They were wise beyond measure, powerful beyond imagination. What happened to them? Sarah asked. They transcended, the obelisk said. They evolved beyond physical form, beyond this dimension entirely. But before they left, they worried. They had learned everything, discovered everything, created everything. They wondered if another civilization would ever reach their level of understanding. Sarah nodded slowly. So, they created you to find their successors. Yes, I was built to test those who would come after, to find a civilization worthy of inheriting their knowledge, their legacy, their responsibility for this galaxy. John drifted closer, his gaseous form swirling with curiosity. But if you are a test, what is the correct answer? What must we do to pass? Trust and gain. What must we do to pass? The obelisk's light dimmed slightly. That is what 8,000 civilizations asked. They wanted the answer given to them. They wanted me to tell them what to do, what to prove, how to succeed. But that's not how it works, is it? Sarah said softly. No. The obelisk replied. The architects did not want to find a civilization that could follow instructions. They wanted to find one that understood the true nature of wisdom. Sarah sat down on the dusty ground, crossing her legs. Her team stared at her in surprise. But she simply looked up at the massive structure and smiled. Can I tell you about my species? About humans? Please, the obelisk said, and Sarah could hear genuine interest in its voice. We're young compared to most of the galaxy, Sarah began. We've only been exploring space for a few hundred years. We're not the strongest, not the smartest, not the most advanced. But we have something special. We remember our mistakes. She continued, her voice growing stronger. In our year 1986, we built a space shuttle called Challenger. 7 brave people climbed aboard to explore the stars. But something went wrong with a small rubber seal. The shuttle exploded, and all 7 died. The team shifted uncomfortably, but Sarah kept going. We could have hidden that failure, been ashamed of it, tried to forget. But instead, we built memorials. We named schools after those 7 people. We taught every new astronaut exactly what went wrong and why. That failure made every flight after it safer. You transformed loss into learning, the obelisk observed. Yes. Sarah stood up, her eyes bright. In our year, 2003, another shuttle called Columbia broke apart. 7 more people died. Again, we mourned. Again, we studied every detail. Again, we made sure their sacrifice taught us something valuable. She walked closer to the obelisk. We've had wars that nearly destroyed us. We've polluted our own planet. We've created weapons that could end all life on Earth. We've made so many mistakes. But each time, we learn. We remember. We honor those who suffered through our errors by making sure we don't repeat them. Mora stepped forward, her voice thoughtful. My people, the Kliktari. We do something similar. We keep the shells of our ancestors in sacred halls. Each shell tells a story of their life, their choices, their mistakes. Kree rumbled in agreement. The golems carve the failures of past generations into our mountain halls. We say, the broken stones teach us where to step. Round. Captain Vrel's tail swished slowly. The Zenthari have a saying. The scar reminds us of the lesson. We wear our mistakes proudly. Lesson, we wear our mistakes proudly. Our one mated. Sarah looked at her team with new appreciation. Maybe it's not just humans. Maybe many species understand this. We just needed someone to say it out loud. Many place. Many place. Many place. The obelisk grew brighter. In 4 million years, no one has spoken to me like this. They came with demands, with expectations, with pride. You came with humility. You came to listen. Because that's what you needed, Sarah said simply. Not someone to prove they were worthy. You needed someone to recognize that you've been carrying a heavy burden alone for so long. You needed someone to understand that the 8,000 civilizations weren't failures to you, they were losses. The obelisk's light pulsed rapidly, almost like excitement. Will you help me honor them? Sarah smiled. Yes. That's exactly what we'll do. The obelisk's light shifted into a warm golden color, like sunrise on Earth. Sarah felt a deep peace settle over her as the ancient voice spoke again. I will now present the true test, the obelisk announced. The test that 8,192 civilizations never understood they were taking. Sarah's team gathered closer, waiting. The holographic displays around them cleared, leaving only empty air and the glowing structure. Show me, the obelisk said. Why failure matters. Captain Vrel's scales rippled with confusion. How does one prove the value of something negative? This seems impossible. Sarah stood quietly, thinking. Then a smile spread across her face. It's not impossible at all. We just need to show the truth. She turned to her team. We need to contact the Galactic Council. All of them. And we need supplies, artists, historians, builders. Can the Harmony's quest support a larger crew? Yes. But why? Captain Vrel asked. Because, Sarah said, looking at the vast empty landscape around the obelisk. We're going to build a memorial for all 8,192 civilizations that came before us. Mora's antennae perked up with understanding. Exactly, Sarah nodded. Each one deserves to be remembered. Over the next 3 weeks, ships arrived from across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, intrigued by Sarah's reports, sent representatives from hundreds of species. Each brought their unique skills and perspectives. The Luminians, beings made of pure light, offered to create eternal holographic records that would never fade. The Melodians, whose entire culture was based on sound and music, composed unique memorial songs for each civilization. The Stoneweavers shaped rock and crystal into beautiful sculptures. The Memoria, a species with perfect historical recall, helped research every single civilization that had attempted the Obelisk's test. Sarah coordinated everything from a command tent set up near the obelisk. She worked 18-hour days, fueled by coffee and determination. Maura worked beside her, helping to organize the massive amount of data they were collecting. "I have found something interesting," Maura said one evening, reviewing ancient records. Civilization number 347 created a mathematical formula. They thought it was wrong, a failure. But look, civilization number 2009 used part of that formula to decode an ancient language. The first civilization taught the second, even though they never met. Sarah leaned over to look. "That's beautiful." Every attempt added something to the collective knowledge, even if they didn't realize it. Cree approached, carrying massive stones effortlessly. "Where should I place these?" "We have monuments for civilizations, 1 through 500 completed. Create a spiral pattern," Sarah suggested. As the days passed, the memorial grew. Each of the 8,192 civilizations received their own monument. Some were small and simple, others complex and beautiful. Each told a story. The monument for civilization number 7 showed their attempt to use music to communicate with the obelisk. Their musical notation, though it hadn't worked, later inspired civilization number 4000 to understand rhythm patterns in cosmic radiation. The monument for civilization number 1012 displayed their artistic interpretation of the universe. Though the obelisk hadn't responded to their art, their color theories helped civilization number 6000 understand light-based communication. Sarah walked among the growing memorial garden with tears streaming down her face. They're all connected, every single one. They were never alone. They just didn't know it. John floated beside her. "This is remarkable. My people always believed that failed attempts should be forgotten, left behind. But you are showing us that failures are foundations." On the 20th day, the Melodians completed their work. They had created a symphony that incorporated elements from all 8,192 civilizations. When they played it for the first time, the sound was so beautiful that several species cried. Even the golems, who rarely showed emotion, stood in respectful silence. Sarah approached the obelisk as the music played. "Do you hear it? Do you see what we've created?" "Yes." The obelisk's voice was filled with something that sounded like wonder. "You have done what no one else thought to do. You have made their attempts valuable." "They were always valuable," Sarah said firmly. "You just needed someone to show you that you weren't counting failures. You were counting stepping stones." The obelisk's light pulsed in time with the music. "I understand now. The test was never about finding the right answer. It was about finding someone who would honor the journey itself." Captain Vrel stood at attention, his military training evident in his posture. "The Zenthari have a ceremony for fallen warriors. We say their names and tell their stories. Should we do this for these civilizations?" "Yes," Sarah said immediately. "Let's honor each one properly." The gathered species formed a circle around the obelisk. One by one, representatives spoke about each civilization. They shared what each had attempted, what they had learned, what they had contributed to the collective wisdom of the galaxy. It took 3 days to honor all 8,192 civilizations. No one complained. No one left. They stood together, united in respect for those who had tried and fallen short. When the last name was spoken, when the last story was told, the obelisk blazed with light brighter than ever before. The light reached up into the sky, visible from orbit. "You have passed," the obelisk declared. "Not because you found the answer, but because you understood the question." The architects wanted successors who would value all attempts at growth, who would honor all journeys toward wisdom. Sarah smiled through her tears. "What happens now?" "Now, The obelisk said. I share what I have protected for 4 million years, the legacy of the first civilization. But more importantly, the legacy of the 8,000 who came after them. The obelisk began to open. The obelisk's surface began to shimmer like water. Sections of the crystalline structure became transparent, revealing chambers within that glowed with soft light. Sarah and her team watched in awe as the ancient guardian opened itself for the first time in 4 million years. I was created to protect the inheritance of the first civilization, the obelisk explained, its voice warm and peaceful. For millions of years, I believed my purpose was to find someone worthy of their power, their technology, their secrets. Golden light flowed out from the opening chambers, forming shapes in the air. Sarah expected to see weapons or powerful machines. Instead, she saw something completely different. These are libraries, Mora whispered, her instruments scanning the holographic displays. Databases of knowledge, art galleries, music archives, philosophy texts. The obelisk continued. The architects left behind everything they learned, created, and understood. But I have been wrong about my purpose all this time. The test was not about who deserved their power. It was about who would use their wisdom correctly. Images flooded the air around them. Sarah saw the art of the first civilization paintings that existed in 4 dimensions, sculptures made of frozen time, music that touched the soul directly. She saw their scientific discoveries, their mathematical theories, their understanding of the universe's deepest mysteries. But more importantly, she saw their mistakes. They failed too? Captain Vrel asked in surprise. Many times, the obelisk said. The architects were not born perfect. They struggled. They made errors. They learned slowly, over millions of years. They wanted their successors to know this truth, that wisdom comes from the journey, not the destination. Sarah walked closer to the flowing images. She saw the first civilization's early attempts at space travel, clumsy ships that barely left their planet. She saw their failed experiments, their abandoned theories, their wrong turns and dead ends. This is their real gift, Sarah said softly. Not just their successes, but the complete story of how they grew. The obelisk pulsed with approval. Yes. And now I understand why I waited so long. Previous civilizations came seeking power or validation. They would have taken the architect's achievements and ignored their struggles. You came seeking connection and understanding. You will take the complete wisdom. More chambers opened within the obelisk. Each one contained something precious, not weapons or unlimited energy sources, but something far more valuable. One chamber held the collected memories and experiences of all 8,192 civilizations that had attempted the test. Wait, John swirled excitedly. You saved their attempts? All of them? Every calculation, every theory, every artistic expression, every philosophical debate. The obelisk confirmed. I could not let their efforts vanish. I hoped that one day, someone would see their value. Someone did. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. They weren't forgotten. You kept them safe all this time. Yes, the obelisk said gently. And now, they can teach. Civilization number 12's incomplete understanding of dimensional physics will help current scientists avoid dead ends. Civilization 5000's poetry about loneliness will comfort those who feel alone in the universe. Civilization 8000's failed diplomatic protocols will show others how to build better bridges between species. Captain Vrel stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. This is extraordinary. The knowledge of 8,000 advanced civilizations, plus the first civilization. The galaxy will advance by thousands of years. But we must use it wisely, Sarah said firmly. Not to prove we're superior to others, but to help everyone grow together. The obelisk's light grew even brighter. There is one more thing I must ask. I was built to guard, and test. But that purpose is now complete. I wish to serve in a new way. What do you want? Sarah asked. I want to join your Galactic Council, the Obelisk said. Not as a test giver, but as a teacher and historian. I want to ensure that future civilizations learn from the past. Not just the victories, but especially the attempts that taught the most valuable lessons. The gathered representatives looked at each other. Mora spoke first. The Kliktari would be honored to welcome you to the council. See. Mora. See. One by one, each species agreed. The obelisk would become part of their community, sharing its vast knowledge and keeping the memories of all who had tried before. Over the next months, the area around the obelisk transformed completely. The memorial garden grew into a living campus. Buildings were constructed to house students, researchers, and visitors from across the galaxy. The place was named the Garden of 9,000 in honor of Sarah's first words to the obelisk. Sarah accepted the position of Director of Historical Compassion, a new role created specifically to teach others the lessons she had learned. Young beings from hundreds of worlds came to study, to learn not just from successes but from the beautiful, valuable attempts that came before. One day, 6 months after the obelisk opened, Sarah stood in the garden watching students explore the monuments. A small ship landed nearby, and a nervous group of insectoid beings emerged. They approached Sarah cautiously. We are from the planet Xril, their leader said through a translator. We attempted to create a unified government for our world, but it collapsed. We failed our people. We heard about this place and came seeking. We do not know what. Sarah smiled warmly and gestured to the garden around them. You came seeking to understand that your attempt wasn't a failure, it was a lesson. Come, let me show you civilizations who faced similar challenges. Let me show you how their experiences can light your path forward. The Xril leader's antennae trembled. You would help us, even though we failed? Failed? Sarah shook her head gently. No. You're not our 9,000th failure. You're our 9,000th teacher. She placed a hand on the being's shoulder. Please, tell us your story. Help us learn. Help us grow. That's what this place is for. As the sun set on the once-dead world, the obelisk glowed with peaceful light. Around it, beings from across the galaxy studied, learned, and shared their stories, not just their triumphs, but their struggles, their attempts, and their beautiful, valuable failures. The test was complete. The inheritance was claimed, and the real work of building a wiser, more compassionate galaxy had just begun.